humans have anatomy, when they say, it's a boy, or it's a girl, it's not, it's not because the doctor's some genius. He figured it out, So when that gets called into question, you run the other way. We're in a sideways generation to the point where gender has when genders come into question, where in a completely binary world where everything is a plus or minus, but everything, nothing you can point to is not male or female, and nothing. Your table, it's being held together by, male and female. There are screws holding the wood part onto the frame, and the frame was molten metal, which was male, that went into a mold, which is female, and the windows that you're staring at here are male, and the frame is female, and the hinges on the door, and the door handle, and the buttons on my vest, and there's just nothing you can look at that's not binary, masculine and feminine. Every single thing in creation, without any exception, is either male or female. And once that gets called into question when clearly, I saw some of your eyebrows being raised because you were just realizing for the first time that everything's male and female, which is really going to freak out the rest of your day. As you walk around the Jewish quarter, you're going to be like, wow, everything is male and female. But it really is male and female. Everything you will look at, you will never see anything but that. And which is important to know. I'll explain why Kabbalistically in a minute. But the humans were not the surprise part. The surprise part was the table or the windows, not the human. Humans have anatomy, When they say, it's a boy, or it's a girl, it's not, it's not because the doctor's some genius. He figured it out, So when that gets called into question, you run the other way. You run the other way. Start looking for life rafts. And what's really interesting about this, back to respect and stuff, is Adam's curse. Adam, meaning the first Adam, the first man. Because he listened to his wife over God. In other words, this is like the second feminist story in the Torah, is Adam choosing to listen to his wife's really bad idea. That was a bad idea. But he listened to her bad idea, and everything went seriously sideways after that. And God had already said not to do that. So, how did you possibly choose a woman over God? But, of course, that was a joke, meaning I said that totally facetiously because this room's full of men who know what God wants them to do and know what God doesn't want them to do, and they keep doing what he doesn't want them to do when it comes to women. So it's famous to do what women want, or what you want with women, and not listen to God. That started at the beginning of time. This is old news, doing that kind of thing. So anyway, but look at Adam's curse. Adam's curse is to go out there and make something of himself and come back with the goods and show respect to him. It says, and she will, Vehu yimshal bach, means Vehu, he, yimshal, will rule, bach, over you. He will rule over you, which was Eve's curse because she blew it. She dominated Adam. And which is fun for a moment for women, but it's not going to be very lasting because, as we said before, respect and attraction are how do you say intertwined? Okay, thank you. Intertwined. But I want to say they can't be the word Okay, something like that. But they are, what's that? Yeah, well, they're constantly wrapped up. So, like, you may think it's cute to play feminist games with your husband when you get married. Extricated. They can never be extricated, or the marriage disappears. So, like, you might think it'd be cute to be like a little dominant when you get married with your husband, and he love it. They love it, by the way. Men love it. Why? First of all, they miss their mom, so that's nice. That mommy's gonna go to the post office for me, and she's gonna this for me, and she's gonna that for me, and and they also like it because men have an averse relationship with responsibility much more than women, who are built in with responsibility and meaning. Men have an adversity to it, and here's this young feminist girl married this guy, and she's taking on everything, and he's like, great. Take on everything, like go pay our bills, like go work or go do whatever you're going to do. And she's kind of enjoying it when she's young. It's kind of nice when she's young to be in this kind of powerful place. And he likes it because he doesn't have to do anything. But after a while, a woman's feminine side starts getting stronger and stronger, because women don't get into their femininity till their 30s, and it never really doesn't really kick in until about their 35, 36, 37. By 38, every woman's like full feminine, like powerfully. Huge, intense femininity comes out of women. It could be because by the time they're in their 50s, young 50s, they lose their reproductive abilities, and it could be that it's kind of like a firework that's shooting. But then at the end, it just, and that's like the 40s, where their femininity is very strong. And if they have set up a opposite dynamic of what should be, where she's the dominant and he's the subdominant, which is what we're discussing right now regarding Adam and Eve, if they set up that dynamic in their 20s, or they're just victims of our generation, so that is the dynamic, no matter how old you are. So and I'll tell you something interesting. For the first time in history, women are trading in their husbands. When they reach 40, 41, 42, they're dumping their husbands. Now, in the Haredi community, they won't dump them. They'll have the lack of respect, and then maybe they'll want to go see a counselor or something and try to build the man up. I have to build up a lot of Haredi men in their 40s. Like right around 35 to 45, I would do a lot of work with men. And in fact, it's not part of my seminar, but I do mention the subject quite a bit. If you recall, I bring up the man training stuff in the seminars, which will be in Brooklyn this Sunday's Brooklyn for men, and then Muncie will be men seminars at night, women by day, in 2 weeks, starting the week of November 17th. So anyway, but what happens is her femininity kicks in, and if the dynamic is wrong, if the dynamic's the opposite, meaning she's the dominant, he's the subdominant, so the marriage just falls apart. Because how can you respect such a guy? He's just a little girl. And she's married to a little girl, and she's now finally a woman. And like I said before, everything's male and female. So now she liked his feminine side because she was male and he was female, and that works. But it doesn't work in your 30s, in your mid to late 30s, when the femininity kicks in strong, no matter how male you were, and the femininity is now strong, and she's smelling for a male now, and she ain't got one because she crushed him years ago, or he was probably crushed by society or his mother, or God knows who. His Hungarian mother. Those women are crushers. And so there's just nothing left of them, which has started this whole industry called man training. Which I'm not a man trainer, but I've been around the sport enough that I know the principles. I just don't have the patience to take on men, to train them in this. But what's amazing about it is the worst. I'm telling you, the worst crash and burn divorces that are already it's over. They're separated. He lives somewhere else. She lives here. They're finally getting enough of the, Kramer versus Kramer hell fire of the divorce has finally come to the get. And then what happens? The guy stumbles upon man training. And he's like, I never heard of man training. So he gets a trainer, and he's working with the trainer, and the trainer's like, you've been doing everything wrong, man. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And anyway, so they meet with the arbitrator right before the get, and he's been training now for already a couple weeks. Takes a couple months, but he's been training for a couple weeks. And they're with the arbitrator, and she starts smelling her husband. She's just kind of like, and she's like, there's a man here, and he's doing everything right now. Doing everything right, and whatever the arbitration, the debt set and everything, and next thing you know, she's sending the forbidden text messages here and there. How you doing? He's like, he hadn't had a text message from her in 9 months. And there's the text. And the man trainer, of course, you send your text directly to man trainer. And what do I do? He's like, it's working. You're going to get her back. And he gets her back. Almost every single time he gets her back. And whenever there's a crash and burn marriage, the problem is not the woman. It's always the man, and it's always his manliness, which is missing. And that is this gender shift where creation itself has lost its way, just like the time of Noah. It's killed the institution of marriage, and it's the requirement of the man to get it back. And it's really funny to watch. And it's even funnier to watch with really intellectual women who are like, they know they shouldn't be having this happen, but it's happening, and they can't stop themselves. And they stop the divorce, and they backtrack, and they stay married. And it's really something very special, very special. Oh, and just one other thing, just to show you on a chart, and then I'll take questions. Something very interesting on a chart regarding cohabitation is, this is the chart of frequency of cohabitation of young couples. Okay, that's the first year. Sorry, that's a little steep. And then every couple kind of comes to some agreement. Thankfully, in Judaism, if you keep Jewish law, it never drops below twice a week. Which they have now polled Americans that for Americans it's after 10 years of marriage, because it doesn't make any sense polling newly married, but they polled people after 10 years of marriage. It's once every 6 weeks, and that's gotten worse now. That's a figure from like, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. It's even worse now. And by the way, as the years go on, it gets worse and worse. So whereas in Judaism, it's halachically obligatory. It can never be less than twice a week, ever. Never can dip below that, which is very interesting, because if you go take the 8 year ago statistic from 10 years, which is already good, is once every 6 weeks versus twice a week, comes out that being an observant Jew means that you'll be cohabitating with your spouse 12 times more than your secular counterparts. Now, that's not something anyone really thinks about. I teach a whole class on it. It's called the best kept secret. And it's really ironic too, because, let's say you're in, you're in San Diego. And you're in San Diego and you see this guy pull up, this greaseback silver hair, and his girl who's like, she's about 20 years younger than him, and they're in a Corvette with no roof on it. They are the picture of romance. They've been married already for 15 years, the two of them, and there they are as engines, just like blah 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 at the stoplight, and you're looking at them, just going like, wow, jealous. Meanwhile, there's this like super chubby Chabad rabbi from San Diego, with like, he's just like walking to shul because it's Saturday, and he's on his way to shul, and where he's got his community and his kiddush which is when communities usually come in California to shul, is Kiddush. And he's on his way to shul, and he's just not what you're jealous of on that street corner in San Diego. But you should be. You should be, because those two, I mean, who knows what we know statistically what they're up to. But we also know statistically what he's up to. The chubby Chabad rabbi on his way to shul. And I think anyone in the world, every man in the world, would rather be that guy than the guy in the Corvette. And I think from this fact alone, every man should just be running to the Kippah store and the Tzitzis store and like, just sign me up, man. Sign me up for a healthy life, a healthy marriage. So what happens is, let's say this is 6 years of marriage. You get to some kind of agreement of frequency, and what happens is when she hits her 30s, when she hits her mid-30s later, what happens is it goes like this. Let's say we'll make this the baseline. So what happens is it goes like, it tanks. It tanks in her mid-30s to zero. And I've met couple after couple after couple after couple after couple. I know already. I don't even have to ask, but I ask. Are you still cohabitating? And he or she is like, no, it's been 2 years or whatever. Zero. It goes to zero. And these are couples you know. These are couples you're people you know. It's at zero if he didn't get his act together as a man. But here's the funniest thing, and this is the amazing thing, is that the men who get the training, or if he didn't need it because he was from a more traditional background that kept the original roles of husband and wife, is that it actually goes like that. It goes like that and plateaus there because she's at the height of her femininity and he's playing his cards right in his marriage. And it just like goes right back to the first year of marriage, which is amazing. I mean, that's just unreal, and it's true. And I've dealt with couple after couple after couple after couple after couple after couple. It is redundant. It is absolutely true. It either goes to zero or it goes back to the first year of marriage. But there's no middle ground. If he's not being a man, there's no middle ground when she's in her mid-30s. So, yeah.
When you say like gender, it's very interesting because I have a little theory about this too. Like, I think maybe it's like like when you stay right, but you have to overcorrect and go too much like left.
Yeah.
And that like maybe like our parents' generation, the man was so dominant and sometimes reached like toxicity.
Male toxicity. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's very likely. Very likely that happened. And people eat way too much. I eat way too little. But I am proof that food, the fuel food gives you, is 10 times more than you realize. What you think when you're fueling up is overeating. And you can eat so much less food and put so much out on so little food, and your whole body will metabolize it. It will find its way, and your muscles will take over. Muscles are ready to fire. They're just ready.
Earlier, that as women mature in the later stages, they become more feminine.
Yeah.
Does the same happen for men? And if not, why not?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't happen for men. Men go through their shift at puberty. Notice women, they get reproductive organs, but they don't, meaning the reproductive organs go into action, but they don't have this like womanhood take them over. It's gradual. Women's womanhood is a gradual, natural progression from girl to woman. Boys don't have anything gradual happening. Nothing gradual there, and it's like within a few months, and he just because who says he's a man just because his body went through all that. And that's why men have it so rough. Boys have it so rough when they go through puberty. You know? So that's her puberty, so to speak. That's her intense shift. Yeah, you Ravi.
Going back to femininity, it's unfortunate that society has made us women. That depends what world you're in, like.
Right.
But like in the very secular world, it's so normal because that's the way society is.
That the women would dominate. I don't know what the subject is.
Women have to go out into the women dominant, going out into the world and becoming something.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, isn't it society that has made women be that way? Like it's not the women's fault.
Not at all the woman's fault. Not at all the woman's. If you need to feminize yourself, do it with your friends. I mean, if you really got to cry something out.
No, I mean more like being more open, you know, like being.
Oh, that's good. That's good stuff. That's not feminine. Being open and caring, and by the way, crying with your wife is wonderful. If you're crying out deep feelings, that's fine. But if it's there's a certain kind of crying men do, which is like it's a little boy poor me cry. Never do that in front of your wife. Ever. I've had men who are, you know, their marriage is going south like that, and they go to couples counseling, but really they didn't realize they're in a trap. The couples counseling is really just to get a few signatures from the therapist that she's truly married to a woman, and that the divorce can go through. So he thought a good idea would be to start whimpering and crying in front of the therapist. He just thought that would be a good move. And, you know, because then everyone will have compassion for him and they'll feel bad for him and sympathetic for him. But what happens? He starts crying. You know what she does? She goes to the therapist. She says, see, that's what I'm telling you. And the guy thinks this is working great. Meanwhile, he's digging his own grave. He's like literally stamping his divorce right now. You know, because he thought crying would be a good idea. Anyway, so that poor me cry, never in marriage. That's what friends are for. We have those poor me moments. Call up a friend, a guy, and go cry on his shoulder. Don't cry on your wife's shoulder. Now, I cry a lot with my wife. A lot. But I'm crying over deep feelings of things, not poor me stuff. Poor me stuff goes straight to other friends of mine.
My question is more like, you know, like when I'm with my guys playing soccer, like I'm like very like pushy and aggressive. Like, I use it to like get my energy out. And then when I will be with my wife, like it's cool like to talk about like what I think, what I feel, like, you know, like tone it down more, you know. Like I don't have to be like super.
Yeah, don't come in like that. When I was saying being the man, it's a subtle man. It's subtle man stuff. It's not, you know, come in this like he-man guy, you know, like that. Nobody wants that. Yeah, you just want to be yourself. You want to be you. You want to be fully integrated. This is, by the way, all this man stuff doesn't mean, okay, you're not, you know, this nice guy. That no one wants it. No woman wants a nice guy. Okay, I mean, they think they do when they're in their feminist mode, but they won't want them later. So get rid of the nice guy stuff. But see, you got to be careful, and that's why your question came up. You got to be careful not to make an inference saying, "Oh, no more Mr. Nice Guy." So then here comes the aggressive man guy, you know, and nobody wants that either. Just be yourself. Be fully integrated human being. That's all she wants. Just a fully integrated human being, and the man of that, not the woman of that. You know, she wants the man of that. And if that poor me side starts coming up, call a friend, go get a beer, and cry it out. Yeah. Or go to a therapist. I've cried stuff out with therapists that just I would never do with my wife. I used to do it with my wife, and I couldn't figure out why she didn't want to look at me for a few days. You know what it's like? It's like catching a cold. When a guy gets married, he can't wait to catch a cold because he misses when he used to catch a cold. His mother would bring him this and that, and you know, and a compress and a soup and a this and that, so he thinks he's going to try that in marriage. Except what happens? She realizes, oh my gosh, I got it's defective. it's defective. Like, how's this thing going to support me that now caught a cold? And the guy learns real quick, never get sick. Never get sick. And you'll notice, most of you, your father never got sick because he learned his lesson. In the first year of marriage, you never get sick. I mean, unless you really catch a real thing. But the old getting sick thing that we do by kind of, a little extra processed flour and over processed flour and like extra sugar and a little sleep deprivation, a little stress and overworking, you catch a cold. But you stop catching those colds when you get married. You stop catching them. But then there's like, just getting nailed by something. And once in a while, a man gets nailed by something. But yeah, don't ever get sick when you're married. And that's why you'll notice your father doesn't get sick. He learned his lesson. She ain't coming with a bowl of soup. She's like, what the hell is going on here? And then you'll see her, like your kid's sick at the same day. And she's just like, oh, sweetheart. Here, let me get you something, And you're like, what about me? She's like, you get better quick. Get back to work. Yeah, you want to say something?
I may have missed it earlier.
And also, if you'd like to say something, because I noticed that I've been watching your facial muscles like cringing in different times. If you have something you'd like to share or ask, you can. Yeah.
I don't know, but it seems like there's some people. So can you possibly clarify? I'm not sure if it was possible what it means in your view, like man, besides like being yourself, like what are some like characteristics or traits of being yourself?
What's being a man? Being a man is, I'd say I'm not going to give a long thing because it's already 5, but I'll give you the most important.
Because you're saying to be yourself, but then you're like, but not really always all the time.
No, be fully integrated yourself, but be there for your wife as a man. And now you're saying, well, what does that mean? That's all. Yeah, I wasn't saying there's no compromise on what I said of full integration of yourself. But when you're being a man, you're really being a man for her. So, for example, women need to review their day when you get home from work. They must review their day, and if you blow it and don't give them time to review your day, you'll pay for that later. They need to review their day, and they have to review their day many times, by the way. They review it with their friend, they review it with this one, they review it with that one, they call their mother, they review their day, they review. But when you get home, you'd think, hey, they're all reviewed out. They're not. They need one last review with their husband, and especially if they're a bunch of little kids, because they spend a lot of time with little kids, and there's an adult now in their presence, and they want to review it one more time just to put you on the page. And your job is to sit there and let her review her day and be there and listen and stuff. Now, but one of the main things is for a man to be a man is to not react. And reactions are always fight or flight in human beings and animals and fish, and not react with fight or flight when she's being contentious. That's being a man. Not react with fight, which means you're going to be contentious back, or flight, which means you're going to run away from this confrontation. But be able to stay why did I bring up listening to her review? Because you need to hear her, you need to field her contentious verbiage when she's being contentious. You need to field her contentious verbiage just as you would her reviews. Don't let her pull you into something, meaning a fight. And also don't run away after you heard her explicatives about you. Just breathe and listen. Don't listen too hard. Listen a little. If you listen too hard, you'll be wounded. And generally a woman, when she's feeling contentious and he's doing the man thing and he's really being there for her by shutting up, what happens is she sees he passed the man test. Her respect goes boom, and her attraction goes boom. But the problem is he can't do that now because he's so wounded by what she said. So it's really important not to listen too carefully, just enough for general content. Do not interrupt her, do not fight, and definitely don't run away. And meaning don't run to the bathroom or to mincha or wherever, like stay right there and stay present with her. create your yogic inner smile, which is the position when you're in a particularly difficult position in yoga. You remember to keep your face, the muscles of your face at peace. It's called inner smile. And be there, be a man for her. That's all. So that's one example of being a man, and probably one of the most important ones. And I can't stress enough the almost impossible thing of not listening. Because again, if he comes out wounded, what good did it do? You know, now he's just wounded, and now she's all like getting romantic, you know, and she wants to make him eggs and sweet potato, and he's just like he can't even eat, you know, after what he just went through, you know, from the what? Every man has had that happen, and anyways, that's an example. And did you want to share something or say something? Okay, but I realize that whenever I bring up these subjects, more and more in the last years, obviously, but whenever I bring up these subjects, my intention is to mess with you, but my intention is not to be hurtful at all. Believe me, this is not where I make my living. I'm here because I care about people. And I know that there are principles of living that will create long-term good. And there are skewed principles of living that will mess you up. And that's what today was all about. And they will mess you up down the road. And so I am willing to mess with people big time with all my love. With all my love. I don't have to be here. This doesn't even make a dent in my monthly nut financially. To whatever stipend they give the rabbis here is not even really relevant to what it costs to run my household, especially with 2 kites for parents. But I'm really here because I love people. Now, but when I'm saying stuff that can be hard to hear, or maybe even fly in the face of philosophies and political or the movements of society for young people today. When I say things that seem to be not just contradictory, but they'll sense it's an attack on those values, which I don't consider values. I consider them a channel that's just being changed, and this is the channel it's on today. Check 20 years later, it'll be another channel. It's not eternal. It's not timeless like our Torah. And so when I mess with people, I'm really messing with people with love in my heart and care, and I want to see people have beautiful marriages, and I want to see people have meaning in their lives. And to wrap it all up, it seems that meaning comes from responsibility. Women have it built into their systems. Men have to get it through taking on voluntarily responsibility. Some of those things we take on are obligatory. You still have to take it on. Like, for example, you keep kosher. You took that on. Now, you may have been raised that way, but you take that on. It's not a big choice because you're raised Jewish and raised keeping kosher, and so you got to keep kosher. It's part of obligatory. But for you to get up and get a cup of water for somebody who you felt might be thirsty, that's elective. You'll probably get more meaning out of that cup of water than putting on your tefillin this morning. Because you put on your tefillin today? That's an obligation. But getting someone a cup of water might be more meaningful because you elected to do that. And when you elect to take on a responsibility, life gets really meaningful. And this is one of the reasons why Bali Tshuva are much more excited about Judaism than their raised observant counterparts, because they're taking a whole world of obligation on electively. You understand? They're taking this whole world of obligation on electively, taking on all this responsibility electively. It's just magical. It's wonderful. Your life gets like infused with meaning forever, for the rest of your life. You have something that no one could ever have. You're just filled with meaning. But with this breakdown between elective and obligatory responsibility, I think that we can all find ourselves living very meaningful lives, no matter how you're raised. And this is something that all of us should be doing, and that is embracing responsibility. And Torah obligates the man, I'm just going full circle now, obligates the man to be married. Not really, but it does say don't be alone, and it also says that men have to have children. Well, children don't come out so good unless they have two parents married to one another, statistically, even though, as I said, there are individuals that can raise a kid, but generally it needs to be a married couple for the kid to come out somewhat normal. By the way, plenty of people don't come out too normal with two married parents. So men are obligated for this, and this, where women are not obligated to be married nor to have children, they have this built-in meaning, which will probably drive them to get married and have children. But the men have to be commanded so, because men abhor responsibilities. Responsibility scares men very much, and meanwhile, that will be our joy. It'll be our meaning, and that will be our joy. And then the last thing I just said is the benchmark that your life's very meaningful. The benchmark of it is the feedback you get. Someone handing you $20 for moving his bag is feedback. Getting a salary is feedback from the world, letting you know that your life's, it's working. It's working. This embracing of responsibility is working because someone actually hired you for responsibility, and you're now getting a salary, and that means it's working out for you. This whole meaning through responsibility. That's feedback, and feedback's really powerful and you want to live off that and feed off it. I mean, we live off God, but you can feed off of the feedback of whether financial feedback. My greatest day is when I get these WhatsApps all the time that usually start with, I just want to thank you. Because I was in your class, I was ready to kill you. And I cried for 2 hours after, and I was gonna raise hell and troll you online. And then I eventually realized that you're right. And my life has turned around. And thank God. And I want to thank you for that. And that's my best day, because I got the feedback of a responsibility I've taken on to make a difference for this generation. Shalom. If you enjoyed watching this, well, watch some more, send it, click it, forward it, join it, subscribe to it. Keep coming on and joining me in this amazing movement to make a big difference in the world. And the biggest thing you can do of all is to join the YomTovMediaClub.com. Please go online, Yom Tov Media Club.